Hey, we're back. So, where we left off, Hitler was building up his military in violation of the Treaty of Versailles. Now, Mussolini decides, let's do the same thing. Nobody's doing anything about Hitler. Let's do the same thing with us. So, Mussolini, Italy, starts building up its military. The League of Nations, I don't know if you remember the League of Nations, but the League of Nations was the group, the first international peacekeeping organization designed by the Treaty of Versailles. This was the organization that the US Senate said, we ain't joining that thing. Because if we join that thing, if one country goes to war, we'll get pulled in. So we said, we ain't joining that because we don't want to get pulled into a war that we don't decide to go to war with. We want to make that decision each and every time. So the League of Nations was, again, this organization that said, if you break the rules, we're going to punish you. But the problem was, like we talked about yesterday with the 459 power treaties and the Kellogg-Briand Pact, how do you enforce these treaties but with war? How do you do it? It sounds good, it's a good idea, just doesn't work. So the League of Nations talked tough. They wagged their finger at Italy, said, don't you do what you're not supposed to do. They wagged their finger at Hitler, said, don't do that. They didn't care. Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1936, and the Ethiopian emperor issues a warning for the League of Nations. He says, it is us today, it'll be you tomorrow. Meaning, if you don't stand up to these guys, these bullies, they're just going to keep bullying everybody else, and it's going to be you next. If you don't stand up to them now, yeah, it's us in Africa. I mean, way south here, nobody cares about us in Africa. Soon you're going to care because they're going to be knocking on your door. Okay, so that's what the Ethiopian emperor says. I think that's kind of a cool statement. It's us today, it'll be you tomorrow. Okay, let's scroll back to American history real quick. So we've been off in the world talking about these totalitarian leaders, talking about Italy, talking about Hitler doing their stuff. Meanwhile, way back in American history, the Monroe Doctrine. Remember that the Monroe Doctrine, designed by James Monroe, early president, said, look, European powers need to leave us alone. They need to mind their own business. They need to stay in Europe, leave us alone. We got ourselves covered. Okay, that's the Monroe Doctrine. The Roosevelt Corollary says, yeah, we agree with the Monroe Doctrine that Europe should stay in Europe and leave us alone, and if they come over here, we're gonna throw hands. We're gonna get feisty here. But also, the Roosevelt Corollary also talked to South America and Central America and said, look, if there's a problem down there, we'll come solve it, even if you don't want us to. And that made everybody in South America and Latin America dislike us, right? We don't want somebody all up in our business. They didn't want somebody all up in their business, and they were pretty upset about it, okay? Now, number 12. I think you got this point from the true and false thing yesterday that we did in class, but remember, after World War I, in the years leading up to World War II, America did not want war. We didn't want it. We had seen what World War I had done. We did not want another war. And the number I told you before was in 1937, a survey said 70% of Americans said we don't want to, we shouldn't have even joined World War I. So we, for goodness sake, don't want to join another thing like that. We want to stay as far away from something like that as possible, okay? Now, the good neighbor policy always reminds me of State Farm Insurance. And you can sing the little jingle yourself, I will spare you, you're welcome. The good neighbor policy, it was started by Herbert Hoover. It was one of the good things he did, all right? So give him a little bit of credit, a little bit. Not much, just a little bit. He started this good neighbor policy. FDR really completed it. And it basically said America is going to be friendly to Central America and South America. So what FDR did through the good neighbor policy was he pulled Marines out of Haiti and said, look, we had said earlier that we would get involved in your stuff, Central and South America. That was our mistake. we'll leave you alone. Our bad. You do you. We'll take care of our own business. We'll leave you alone. So really, it signaled to South America and Latin America, we want to be a good neighbor. We want to be your friends. We're not going to boss you around. We're not going to be bullies. We will leave you alone. So that's a good neighbor policy. Essentially, it said, we want to be friends. We want to be friends with South America and Central America. We want to be your pals. Play with us. All right? So there's that. Heck, I'll stop there and come back for 14.